Driving it home with Patti Vasquez, Patti Vasquez.
From global conflicts to greenhouse gases, the folks refusing to wear masks says, and politicians getting caught grabbing asses. She's driving it home with Patti Vasquez.
Oh, happy Friday out there, listeners. My name is Ken Mejia-Beal, and you are listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. I am fortunate enough to be joined by Mike. Are you there?
I'm here. How you doing, Ken?
Well, listeners, fun story. I'm stuck in traffic, so I'm having the most Mondayest Friday ever. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Ken. We had a whole thing prepared if you weren't here to dial into the show. That it was a good bit. I felt like I was living a sitcom episode for a minute there.
Can we talk about the bit?
Sure. I was going to open and I was going to say this is Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez, but I am not Patti Vasquez. I am Mike Nellis, former senior advisor to Kamala Harris and founder of the Chicago-based digital agency Authentic. And then I was going to explain where you were.
That would have been great. But Mike, thank you so much for being there and not being stuck in traffic. A little bit about, can you tell everyone how you got with the Harris campaign?
Yeah, so I worked for Kamala Harris for a really long time. I think about 5 years. I was with her as a consultant for the entire time I was with her. I was always a consultant. But when she was Attorney General for the state of California and she was running for U.S. Senate, so that would have been 2016, I was there the night that she was elected in California, same night that Trump was elected president the first time, and then continued to work with her through her time in the Senate and through her presidential campaign, and then she joined the Biden ticket after that. And my job was to oversee basically all the digital aspects of her campaign operation. So I primarily myself, I built her online fundraising apparatus. I built up her social media. And to be clear, I had a whole team of people that were doing amazing work around me. My job was to sort of oversee it and develop the strategy for it. And we did the digital advertising for her as well, for her Senate campaign and then her presidential campaign. And then I advised her occasionally on a few other things like comm strategy. The launch of her campaign in 2019 was one of the things I was deeply involved in.
Well, something that you and I've spoken about off air, I guess, is just how wonderful she is as a human being. And that, I know we've both been in politics a long time, and that doesn't happen often. No. But what was an average moment like with Vice President Harris?
Yeah, so I would say they vary between two things. They're very loving, sweet, like personal moments. Like she was the first person who called me when my son was born. My son was born in the middle of her presidential campaign in 2019. And she was the first person to call me that night, which was amazing because she was like in the middle of Iowa, like God knows where in Iowa, like campaigning, and like somebody at least reminded her to give me a call. And there were a lot of like little moments like that. She did a good job of like remembering bits and pieces about my life. Like I didn't see her all the time. Like I didn't share an office with her. I didn't talk to her every day, but I would get to see her like usually like every couple of months for check-ins and stuff like that. Cause she's a very busy person. I'd be on conference calls and stuff. And then on the professional level, she's very tough. And when I say tough, I don't mean it in a negative way. Like she has a high bar and a high expectation for the content that was going to be developed in her name, the historical context that we were going to put it in, the way we were going to treat people. Like I've worked with a lot of politicians who, and have built a lot of online fundraising programs. I often joke, if you've gotten a fundraising email that you liked, I probably wrote it. If you didn't like it, I had nothing to do with it.
Good answer.
Yeah, right. But when I met Kamala Harris, like she told me, like, we're not going to scam people out of their money. We're going to treat people with respect. We're going to write fundraising programs that are in my voice to the best of your ability, that we're going to treat people right. And that endeavored a lot of loyalty for me personally, because I felt like the bar had now been set so high for the things that I could do or couldn't do. And that isn't true for all of my clients. A lot of politicians are obviously pretty, winner take all. I got to do whatever I got to do to get the next $5 in the door. And that creates a lot of problems. And I'll also say, and I'll share another story. So when I started working for Harris, I was working at another agency. And that agency kind of fell apart, and I decided to start my own company. And I asked the Senator Harris to come with me and be my first client. And I sort of told her, like, I'm gonna build a different company. Like, we're gonna treat our employees right, and we're gonna build this really special place and try to do a little bit better and move the industry forward. Because Ken, as you know, like, people who work in politics are treated pretty poorly. And she asked me in that meeting, "What are you gonna do to make your firm better than the firm you were just working at?" And all the other companies in the space impressed me for that. Like, how am I going to build a diverse and equitable workplace? How am I going to pay people a living wage? What kind of benefits am I going to have? And she held my feet to the fire. And when I met with her, like, every time after that, she was checking in with me to make sure I was still doing that. And that isn't the case for all of my clients. So she was just a really special person to be around. And she was always really good to me and really good to my staff and really good to my family.
That is awesome. Now, I am now in studio.
Yeah.
I have made it.
Everybody just missed, like, a great moment where I was vamping on while you were, like, getting your coat off and getting the hood on.
I so appreciate that. I did not have any experience in musical theater, and all I could think was quick change, get in and get out.
I have enough improv experience from college that I just knew to, like,
I'm happy because this could have been a disaster. Yep. So thank you.
We're gonna yes and our way through the next hour. So
yes, we will.
Yep.
So working with, because you are the founder of
Authentic. Yep.
Authentic, yes.
Yep.
So walk us through that.
Yeah. So, Authentic is our digital marketing agency.
Yes.
We work with a lot of prominent Democratic candidates and causes. So we work, like, our biggest client right now is Adam Schiff, who is the senator-elect.
Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. Adam is actually my oldest client. He's been with me for 10 years, which is kind of crazy. And we also work with, so Tammy Baldwin's another one of our big clients. She's got reelected in Wisconsin.
Yes.
Pat Ryan got reelected, who's a member of the House. Angie Craig, another member of the House. Lauren Underwood here in the Chicago area. And then we work with a bunch of nonprofits too. So the ACLU, Move On, Brennan Center for Justice, the United Nations. And so we do online fundraising, digital advertising work for them. We have a really great team scattered throughout the United States. We're a completely virtual company now at this point, post-COVID.
That is really fantastic. And I don't know how to say this the right way. You are a very young person relative to the other folks that might be doing stuff in politics.
I like how you had to add in relatively, so I couldn't enjoy the compliment.
Well, darn it.
I'm 37.
Yes.
I've been doing this for 20 years now. I got started when I was 16, which is kind of crazy. But I volunteered on my first campaign when I was 16. I dropped out of college to go work on Barack Obama's presidential campaign in 2007 because I grew up in Nebraska, and across the river he was running in the Iowa caucus, and just straight after the races from there. So I've been able to do quite a lot in 20 years.
Well, that is awesome. And when I say relative, I mean, you and I have been in a lot of those political rooms and
filled with a lot of old white guys.
Well, see, I
love you. By the way, if you're an old white political consultant, I love you. It's not an insult.
We do love you. Thank you for everything.
Hiring us.
Yes. For keeping us employed. But no, there are very few. And I remember when I first got into politics, I was significantly younger than I am now. I was like 23, 24. And I was kind of like, well, I'm young, so it's fine. Like, as I get older, the rooms will change. Mm-hmm. Cut to now, I am still one of the youngest people in the room, and I'm like pushing 40. And it's like, so what is going to happen? Because there's a giant gap that I think we're missing out on and getting young folks involved in politics and getting. I think the problem in politics is we haven't found the right way to put young folks in politics and make them feel important.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, the Obama years, for example, it felt like we are doing something more than stuffing envelopes. We are changing America. Yeah. And we'll get back there. We will definitely get back there. But congratulations. There's a lot of huge wins.
Thank you.
So you clearly know exactly what you're doing.
Or I don't know. Most days.
Well, I mean, listen, if you give me, like, on a range, I know what I'm doing 88% of the time.
Sure. 2%
of the time, I know what I'm doing. I'm just choosing not to do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, that number might be higher for me in my personal life.
In my personal life, we're at like 50.
50-50.
Yeah, it's Like, I know I shouldn't be eating the nachos at 2 a.m,
Sure.
but I'm doing it, and I'm not sorry.
I know I shouldn't order that third beer, but
Yes.
here we go.
Let's do it.
Yep. For younger people listening, the closer you get to 40, that third beer will really knock you out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The third beer is where you start to make those decisions.
Yep. It's like I'm either going to 3 a.m. or I'm going to bed in 20
Yes.
minutes. Yep.
And these are the things no one tells you
No.
as you get older, because I'm a martini man.
Ooh.
So, yeah. And
We couldn't be polar opposites because I'm a pint of Guinness.
Oh, well, see, I like Guinness, but here's the problem. I have a Guinness, and then something in my head goes, save the calories, harder the martini, eeny. And that's the evil voice.
Yeah. But then you've made your immediate mistake, which is that you've drinking a beer and then you've switched to something else, and that's the kiss of death.
Well, now I just go right to the martini, and I say, you know what? This is what it is. But no, it's the third one is where every decision, it's like, okay, I'm going to be late tomorrow.
Yep. I'm
not going to show up at this meeting. Everything changes. But speaking of changes, we are going to go to break. So thank you for listening to WCPT 820 AM Chicago Progressive Radio. We will be back shortly.
Hey guys, this is Richard Chu, host of Chu's Views, weekday mornings from 6 to 8 a.m. on WCPT. For those of you who don't know, we have a digital newsroom anchored to our radio station. Our journalists at Heartland Signal uncover some of the worst extremism from state legislatures, congressional races, and across government in the Midwest. And now, every weekday morning during the 7 o'clock hour, I'll fill you in on the latest Heartland Signal articles, editorials, and sound bites. You won't want to miss it.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez on WCPT 820.
Welcome back to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. And my name's Ken Mejia-Beal. You'll be driving it home with me today, WCPT 820 AM and Heartland Radio. We are back. I'm here with Mike Nellis today, he's a little humble, but one of the best in the business. So he'll be back shortly. We want to thank our sponsors, Minocqua Brewing. And if you've not had Minocqua Brewing, please make that part of your buying, part of your everything. The beer is amazing. We also want to thank Kids Above All. We have some great sponsors today, and we have some really great guests coming up that Mike and I are going to be talking to. Lots of great guests, lots of great conversation, and I see some talking points here. Mike, what are your thoughts on Pam Bondi, by the way?
Oh,
let's just jump right into it. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, a marginal improvement on Matt Gaetz.
Yes.
So I'll grant them that. By the way,
got it.
So I mean, here's the thing. Pam Bondi is probably about as close to the best case scenario, which is still pretty awful for this Trump administration.
Got it.
And Trump once paid Pam Bondi $25,000 to her campaign committee to kill an investigation into Trump University, which was the for-profit college that Trump started when the for-profit college was like all the rage. I think, what was that, like I think it was 2013.
Yeah.
And he had Trump University. And he was scamming, and they were, predatorily targeting like veterans and seniors and people of color to try to teach them how to do business. And he doesn't know anything about that.
Right.
But then he paid her off, and now she's, made her way to Attorney General. But this situation with Matt Gaetz has been, I think, particularly bad for Trump. And there's this political commentary that you hear that, Donald Trump, just wanted to, pick Matt Gaetz to distract from the other crazy picks, or he was picking Matt Gaetz so he could get who he really wanted, which would be less bad. But I don't really think so. I think he genuinely wanted to put Matt Gaetz in that seat because I
agree.
Yeah. He burned a lot of political capital, and he's trying already 3 weeks in to govern like he has a mandate when he doesn't. He's actually a lame duck president.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
We all know. And I also think part of the, I don't know the right word. Part of the problem with this whole Trump administration and his picks are, it feels like a big F you to America.
Yes.
And it feels like a big middle finger. And there's it also feels like there's nothing we can do about it. So seeing Matt Gaetz kind of step aside, even though Pam is not better. I mean, she's slightly better.
Marginally.
Yeah, Like,
that's how I describe it. On the edges.
Yes, it's kind of like, do you want a tetanus shot or a COVID shot? It's kind of the same thing. The after effects might be a little bit different. But, yes, God bless America. But speaking of God blessing America and the importance of journalism, we have an independent journalist on the line, Nicole Johnson. And the reason I really wanted to have her on is because we'll talk about it. Nicole, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Ken. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good.
Nicole, I was just getting into the importance of independent journalism, and I really do think folks like you are going to bring us through the next 2 years, the next 4 years. Why do you do what you do, by the way?
That's a good question. That's a really good question, Ken. I kind of came about this in a roundabout way, but the true goal, I'm from the south side of Chicago. I'm from Inglewood, and I just wanted to tell better stories about my community. I also wanted to engage the powers that be, the major influencers in our society, and challenge them to say, are you really doing everything that you can? Are you really following the data that says we should do X instead of Y, even though you're investing hundreds of millions of dollars into Y? Should we be doing that? Is that for the betterment of our communities? And so being able to do that and bring those stories to regular everyday people and voters, that's what I wanted to do. Like I said, I also wanted to engage, elected officials in different ways that we run our society in a way that mainstream outlets don't do for folks like us.
I 100% agree. And what I do like about what you do, for number one, you're everywhere, which is kind of awesome. Number two, you are easy to talk to. So do you feel that because you are easy to talk to, but you do have that edge of, I am here for the people, do you think that allows you to but report more authentic stories?
Absolutely. I mean, whatever you do, you've got to be a people person. You've got to understand that this person lives, walks, breathes, eats, has feelings, gets sad, gets happy, just like you. The reasons may be different, but that's still the same. And so when you approach and move forward with humanity, with someone else's humanity in mind, people can relax, right? You make connections. So me growing up in Inglewood, I had an interview with a gentleman yesterday, and he's from Humboldt Park. And then we got to talking about the people that we knew. And so you just built that rapport. When I ran for office, I would joke with people about, oh, you have plastic in your windows because it gets so cold in Chicago winters. It's like, you got to put plastic on your windows. And I would point that out and be like, yeah, I just put my plastic up the other day. Just being able to show people, like, I see you, I'm human like you, and build that rapport. And people always, they kind of let their guard down. I think people also kind of look at journalists as tattletales and someone who's a snitch and someone who's nosy. And so I try to put people at ease and say, hey, I'm just trying to be here and get some answers. I'm not going to try to trap you up, but I will ask some difficult questions.
And what is that response to that when you say, listen, I have difficult questions to ask, I am going to ask them? What is that conversation like?
Yeah, so I interviewed Mayor Brandon Johnson in May for his 1-year anniversary, and the transcript, I did it with the Chicago Defender. At the time, I was freelancing with the Chicago Defender, and, I was asking him, really going back and forth about, how he was addressing the migrant mission as his office regards it, and is it equitable in how his office has been giving solutions in communities. And, I mentioned, I was like, I really appreciate you going, toe-to-toe with me and engaging me, because he could have shut me down. But, I verbally said, I appreciate you going toe-to-toe with me, but I want to push you a little further. So I acknowledge that, hey, this is going to be a difficult conversation. I'm not going to, softball you. I'm going to ask you questions that the people want to hear. And they were the questions that people wanted to hear. When people read it and they sent me messages and said, no one's covering this the way that you're covering. No one's asking him the questions the way you're asking him. So the people see it and they benefit from it and they're informed. And then also I want to make sure that the people that I interview, they feel like I didn't just, sideswipe them or kind of catch them off guard, but it's like, hey, I know that you're going to bat. I know I'm challenging you, and I appreciate you for doing that, so that they'd be more motivated to continue to lean in with me instead of just shut down.
So I have a question for you, which ever since the election over the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of like Elon Musk and others like on X saying, traditional media is dead. It's all going to be about individual journalists. You're the journalist now. And I'm sort of curious how you feel about, as an independent journalist, the intersection of the work that you're doing and like the evolution of the technology. And I'm imagining that, these platforms like X, like Blue Sky, like some of these other places are your means of delivery to get the information that you're reporting out. How do you approach that and how do you view that?
I think it's important, and this is why digital literacy is so important, because there's so much information out there, and unless you have strong digital literacy discretion skills, you will take any information with someone that sounds good, and you'll take it as truth. You won't know to back it up. If they're citing a report, you won't know to go to that website and see who's funding that organization, who's on the board, what other things have they invested in, who's funding, like all sorts of questions that you should be asking, so that you know where on the side, what perspective a particular research institution or a publication or outlet is coming from. But I will say, though, that our tools like Medium and Substack and even TikTok, like I'm in a graduate program at Northwestern, a journalism program at Northwestern, and we had an assignment where we had to do a TikTok. Now I thought I was a hip, but I'm a hip millennial, but I'm not like that. So, I had to do my little TikTok video, and I posted it around, because I was up late, I posted it around midnight, and I had about 800 views by 1 a.m.
Wow.
And an hour later, and I had a bunch of people commenting, people saying, because I did a video on the women that will run the White House, a TikTok on the women that will run the White House, and I was saying, hey, and so we had people were commenting, a lot of people saved the post, lots of engagement around it, and so that provides me with an opportunity to build my own brand, where I could probably say the things that a traditional outlet may not be able to carry in the way that I do it. And so the traditional means, you got your outlets like the AP, the Chicago Tribune, even the Tribe, which is local here. And then you've got your own platform and your own persona that you can present and put your own spin to it. So there is value in having both of those. One, because the other outlets have already a built-in audience and readership and a base. And as an independent, if I'm working at the AP, if I'm working at one of these institutions, people will see my bylines and they'll follow me and they'll look me up. And so it'll help advance. So if and when I get the boot, or I want to say something that, my outlet or my institution may not stand by, I can do that and I'll have a following behind it. And I think we're in an environment where people will say, well, that does offer stability. I was like, well, neither do any of these other jobs. We see that anything, you could get hired today and then get fired tomorrow. and regardless of the institution, especially in the industry and journalism. So it's just kind of like, hey, I'm doing what I can, and people see you. You'd be surprised. You know, people will hold your stuff, and then one day they'll message you. Someone will send them like, hey, I saw your TikToks, and I want to bring you in for something. So I think it builds a platform, and it shows people, like, this is how you approach stories. This is how you go about your business. You know, you're doing stuff. You're doing heavy research on it. I know that you can bring that to this institution as well. It's important that we still maintain our institutions. One thing I'll add about our institutions is that because the business model with our institutions is changing and they're kind of late to getting the public to pay for news, only people that have will be able to pay for news. You'll see paywalls on the New York Times when they're saying really important stuff, when they are busting myths about Trump. This was before Election Day. But it's like, if I don't have a subscription to the New York Times, I'm not getting it. But you know where I am getting my news? A random dude from TikTok or YouTube. That's not helpful.
No, go for it.
No, and I think it's an interesting perspective that you're bringing here, because I can say as like a political practitioner, what I see on the other side is we see so many of our voters who are retreating to private spaces. And when you hear somebody talk about a private space, you assume it's like a text message thread. But really what it is it tends to be influencers. It tends to be single sources of authority because people don't trust our institutions as much anymore. Correct. How do you take the seriousness of that? Because there's got to be, I don't know how big your audience is because we just met, and I'm sorry for that. But I imagine you have this audience of people that are waiting for your next newsletter, that are waiting for your next social media post. How do you take the responsibility of that?
You know, I really wish that I could do it more often, but I think I'm more engaged. What's important is that I do topics that are important to me. Like, we have this Pam Bondi lady. I need to do a video on her, right?
Please.
You know, or a TikTok, as the kids say, a TikTok, not a video, right? So, so it's really just like planning out my stuff. And doing it in batches, and I'm more motivated because, like I said, I got the most engagement I've ever gotten on anything when I posted that video. Within an hour, I got that many views and that much engagement. That's never happened for me, so I'm like, okay, I think I got something good here. But it is a responsibility because people do look. Like, when I just listen to my friend, she's my friend in my head, but I listen to her podcast. And when she doesn't have a podcast on a regular Tuesday and Thursday, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, how am I supposed to know? She's the only reason why I know all the details of Diddy, right?
Right.
So she read all the lawsuits from Cassie on down. So she gave me the Cliff Notes. So I want to be able to give that to people because, to be honest, Ken, like, the news is so much. If you've got something, and the time span and the attention span that we have is so little. Like, if you don't get people in 5 seconds, they're scrolling, and so you've got to be able to do it really quickly and be able to provide them with credibility.
I will say, I think all of our attention spans are so less than what they used to be. I think it was 2 weeks ago, I was watching a news piece from 1988 on something from 60 Minutes, and the whole buildup was like, oh my God, if I'm tuned out. And that's when I realized I too am guilty of, I need my news within the first 5 seconds. I have 2 minutes.
Was it like
get on with it?
Yes, please. Give me the story.
Was it like an old World War II ticker tape where they're like, look at the boys here, they're coming out to the war?
It was just weird. It was like, meet Pam, and you get her back. It's like, what are we here for? I don't understand. But I think it's because our news is so much news, number one, and number two, I think we naturally have progressed to, I need my news now. I need everything now. I need everything quick. I would like it within the next 2 minutes. I would like part A to be as close to part B as humanly. Yeah. We're just quick, and that's why I really wanted Nicole here because I follow you. And there are so few, especially when we talk about independent female journalism, very few. Independent black female journalism, even fewer. And I think that we have to highlight where we're getting our news, who's delivering our news, and what's in it for them. And what I found is a lot of our independent journalists, what's in it for them is you, is your knowledge. It's not about sponsorship or, you know what I mean, Nicole. It's not. It's about, like, I just want to give you the news.
Well, Ken, I also need a check, too, so I ain't going to front. Because, like, my mortgage got to get paid, so.
Listen. The check
but you're
will
right.
come.
It's because the check will come. You're right. It's the right thing. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, I was doing a lot of coverage during the DNC. A lot of people were in my DMs. A lot of people were like, "I see you, Soren. I see you."
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, I have a good thing going, and so I have to just keep up with it. And you're right, the checks will come. But it is the passion, because it's stuff that burns me up in a good way. It lights me on fire. And it's like, it's got to get out here. And I know no one's saying it the way I'm saying it.
That is 100% correct. And before I let you go, Nicole, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can go to NicoleWroteThis.com. So NicoleWroteThis.com. That's also my IG handle and my Twitter. So Nicole Wrote This.
Thank you so much for joining us, Nicole. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening, folks. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back after these messages.
Out Chicago.
If you think of every single thing from the Supreme Court to deporting these poor immigrants who are just trying to work hard and feed their families and have a better life, to the trans community that was thrown under the bus, you just wonder, where will the hate, where will the fear end? And if you keep thinking about it, like I just mentioned, it's a nowhere street mentally.
Catch Out Chicago every Sunday, 11 to 1 on WCPT 820. Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez on WCPT 820.
Hello, and welcome back to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. My name is Ken Mejia-Beal. I'm here with the very accomplished, very smart Mike Nellis. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That is correct. I don't know about the accomplished or smart part, but definitely got my name right.
Listen, you've accomplished a lot.
Listen, I'm Irish. I have to put myself down.
No, we are out of the humble season. We are about lifting up everybody, including ourselves. Before I get into anything else, I want to talk about Saturday on The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath. Thank you. We'll be talking to David DeWitt of the Ohio Capital Journal, Michael Tomasky of the New Republic, Will Bunch of the Philadelphia Inquirer, and author and columnist Jill Lawrence. The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Saturdays from 1 to 4 p.m. Central on WCPT 820. I don't know why I read it like that, and now I'm regretting all of my life choices. But something I'm not regretting is being a committee member for Victory Fund. It's a great organization that does a lot for LGBTQ politicians and people across America. And today we have Jinsoo Daniel Huh, which is our caucus chair for Victory Fund Midwest. Jinsoo, how are you?
I'm doing well. And a quick heads up, it's Huh, not Who.
Huh. Thank you. You know what's funny? When I was looking at it and I said, I so don't want to get this wrong. And as the words were leaving my mouth, I said, I'm getting this wrong, but thank you.
You're good.
No, trust me, I've been called Ken Mejia so many times. It's like I have nightmares about it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you, too. So you are fairly newly elected. Is that correct?
Yeah, the results actually came out this morning, so this is, I guess, late-breaking news.
Yeah.
Hey, congratulations.
Well, of course, you have my support. So can you tell everyone a little bit about why Victory Fund is so important?
Yeah, I'll happily share about that. So Victory Fund is an organization that's committed to electing LGBTQ folks up and down the ballot. It's just so important to have representation at every single level, from the federal level, the state level, to local level. We want to make sure that folks are at the table. And, obviously making sure that they're defending LGBTQ rights, but having just that LGBTQ voice and qualified voice is just important as they're passing legislation, for folks to see like community members like LGBTQ folks are making a difference in the community as well. And there's also their sister organization, Victory Institute, that helps, do research around LGBTQ candidates, what challenges they're facing, and also this training. The organization is bipartisan, so there's LGBTQ folks on both sides of the aisle, although there's heavily on one side. But it is just making sure that at all levels, LGBTQ folks can be represented.
That's amazing, and I've known about Victory Fund for a long time. And it's just an amazing organization. I just want to thank you for the work that you do. Yes. I got to jump in. I want to ask you about like a topic from this week to just get your take on this. Now that you're newly elected, I think your voice is more important now on this than ever. But this last week, we've seen Nancy Mace and House Republicans attacking Sarah McBride, who is the nation's first transgender member of Congress. Trying to restrict her from using the Capitol bathrooms. I'd like to get your take on the cruelty of that and the spectacle of the. God, I hate to use the word like hysterics, but like it just feels like the right word for Nancy Mace.
Yeah.
I'd like to get your take on that.
Yeah, I think that hysterics is a great way of putting it on there. I think it's dehumanizing, it's distracting. Sarah McBride, we're so excited. She was Victory Fund endorsed, has been someone that we supported at the state legislature level as well. Victory put out a statement from Mayor Anise Parker, the CEO, just saying, strongly condemning the acts on there. It's bigoted. It's transphobic, and these aren't the issues that real Americans care about right now. This is a distraction from other policies, this has been a policy in place. And I think what was really, really sad was hearing Representative Mace, when asked by a reporter, like, is this because of Representative McBride? She flat out said yes, right? So it's so targeted. Yeah. And I just love that Representative McBride, or future Representative McBride, just responded with grace, saying, I'm here to represent the people of Delaware and represent their interests and make sure that they're fighting for the people and, their economic policies, what they really care about there right now. So I think it's a spectacle. I think that people are using it as a wedge issue, which is really unfortunate.
That statement that Representative-elect McBride put out, I think is so much grace and so much poise, but also just really, really smart politics, because they're trying to bait Democrats into continuing a conversation about trans rights that's rooted in where the Republicans want to have that conversation, right, in things that maybe people don't fully understand. And they're sort of overreaching from the last election, and it was just really disgusting. But I don't know Sarah McBride. I didn't know a ton about her until she was elected a few weeks ago. I didn't work on her campaign, but I'm incredibly impressed, and I'm really glad she's on our side.
Yeah, she's going to do a great job. She's going to do
amazing.
Yeah. So, Jinsoo, what in your capacity, when we look at the Midwest and what we're trying to build here, what are some of your goals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we saw how important, the Midwest is. We know that there are key battleground states like Michigan and Wisconsin that have implications on the federal level. We had, LGBTQ Congressman Eric Sorensen in Illinois, which is reliably blue, but, he was in a purple district and we were able to hold his seat. So that really matters there as well. So I think some goals for the Midwest is to make sure that we have people on the ground in all of these states on the Victory Campaign Board. So in the Midwest right now, we have a lot of folks represented in Chicago, of course, and we're, Ken, you and I are members up there as well. Mm-hmm. And we also want to help grow membership in other areas. So how do we make sure that we have members in Kansas, more of a presence in Wisconsin, more of a presence in Michigan? So when LGBTQ candidates run, there's a base that we can have people who are able to financially support, recruit other folks to run as well, and also recruit to help it with campaigns. Something that I've been so impressed by is areas like Wisconsin. Wisconsin has so many LGBTQ electeds at the state legislature level. Yep. I'm obviously very proud of being an Illinois resident, but something I think people don't realize is Illinois has exactly one state senator and one state representative who are out.
And they're in the same place. Can we? Because that's also very important.
That's crazy.
The Senator Mike Simmons and Representative Kelly Cassidy, they are literally in the same area. So I will let you continue. Yes.
No, agreed. Completely think we have to make sure that we have to bring representation here. And I think there's been such great things like in Wisconsin, the Assembly Minority Leader, Greta Neubauer, who is out member of the LGBTQ community. There's so many LGBTQ electeds who won this year in the Assembly, and they actually flipped so many seats there because they got the gerrymandered seats thrown out by the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. So they are close to flipping the Democratic to become Democratic up there again with so many LGBTQ leaders. Of course, you can also point to state senators. Someone like Kristen Alfheim, who was also victory endorsed, won her state Senate seat up in the Appleton area in the northern part of the state. We have congressmen like Mark Pocan, who's out, gay. And also, of course, we can't forget, of course, Senator Tammy Baldwin, who had a really tough race but was able to hold on. So we have places like Wisconsin who have incredible representation up and down. You have people like Mayor Satya Rhodes over in Madison. There's a large presence of LGBTQ folks in Madison and Milwaukee on their city councils, too. But Wisconsin actually doesn't have any Victory Campaign Board members. And so how do we make sure that when there are so many out candidates in places like that, we are able to help recruit and be able to support these wonderful candidates? We also look at places like Kansas and Missouri, Oklahoma, where we do have some members, but how do we make sure that we can grow those memberships so we can support people like Congressperson Sharice Davids in Kansas, but also in the local level as well, because we know that local politics really does impact citizens like you and me.
Well, and I want to jump in here because I think it's really interesting. You brought up Tammy Baldwin, who I think is an amazing politician and won statewide at a time when Kamala Harris didn't, right? So there's some brand loyalty there. But tying it back to the conversation that we had about Sarah McBride for a second, is that I think to a certain degree, Republicans in particular and the far right will try to make LGBTQ elected officials and others from marginalized communities make their identity their whole job and try to box them into stuff. And Tammy Baldwin is a perfect model of someone who never lets her identity be the reason that she's fighting, leads with it, and helps to bring others along with it, which is probably part of the reason that Wisconsin is doing so much better than Illinois, is that they have someone who is lifting people up like that. But she doesn't get boxed in. Danica Rome in Virginia is another one like that, as a transgender member of the state legislature. Her entire campaign is built on fixing the roads. That's almost all that and I apologize. I don't know the pronouns, so I'm just going to say they, so I apologize. Danica does an amazing job. I've donated to Danica in the past. I've met them a few times and read their book. And I think McBride's doing it too. So it's just such a perfect, the blueprint is there for how to do that and how to be the first and how to push past this stuff and build that connection. And really what people want is they want people who are going to work hard and fight for them. And it's just amazing. So.
Absolutely.
No, exactly. I mean, I think Danica Rome talks so much about Route 28, right?
Yep.
Everyone knew Route 28 in Virginia because of Danica. And I think you're absolutely right about Tammy, Senator Baldwin. Of course, she's there to make sure that, she got the bipartisan Respect for Marriage Act passed after, Justice Thomas suggested that, gay marriage was same-sex marriage was on the chopping block. But when you talk to folks in Wisconsin, she's done so much for things like healthcare. She's fought for manufacturing. She's someone who has the respect of farmers and has the endorsement of them. And, something that I appreciate that she's done, especially, is that, with Obamacare, she wrote the provision for anyone under the age of 26 can stay on their parents' plan. She was the one who made that happen. So I think that people know that about her. And, of course, that she's out. But, to win a statewide election, as someone from Madison and an out proud lesbian in a state like Wisconsin that's very purple, it's a big deal.
Huge.
And I think it's exactly what you said. Yeah, it's exactly what you said. It's just because people know that she's a fighter for everyday Wisconsinites.
And to win in an election that was really bad for Democrats. The fundamentals of this race suggested we probably should have lost more statewide Senate races.
Probably should have.
We certainly deserve to. I think had the Republicans run a better candidate at the top of their ticket, that's sort of getting lost here. But for Senator Baldwin, and I've worked for Senator Baldwin for a really long time. I'm a huge fan, and just have so much respect for her ability to organize and bring people together. Just such a special leader, and I'm glad we have her.
Well, Jinsoo, I have a thing for you before I let you go off and enjoy the rest of your weekend. How can our listeners help our cause, help Victory Fund, and donate, sign up? Where can we get all that great stuff going?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you want to support, you can go to victoryfund.org, and you can either donate straight to Victory Fund, and they'll donate to candidates. There's also a page for every single candidate that's endorsed by Victory Fund, and there's also spotlight candidates. So people that we think are historic, they might be the first out person in their state legislature or in their state senate, or there may be someone who is like the first transgender person, or it might be a really tough race to win on there. So if you want to think about ways to prioritize your funding, that's a great way to support as well. I think the other way to support is if you're really interested in joining the Victory Campaign Board, like Ken and I are a part of. It's an organization that provides contributions, but then also we actually help to endorse which candidates are selected. There's an application process on there. And then, of course, volunteer, support, go on. And especially if you're feeling, especially motivated, Victory Institute does run candidate and campaign trainings for LGBTQ folks. There are fellowships. If you're thinking about running, there's a fellowship. This is how I got involved with Victory, through the Victory Empowerment Fellowship, which is specifically for LGBTQ people of color and or transgender people. So there's lots of ways to get involved, and hopefully, we see a lot more people get activated with this unfortunate win for President Trump.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day, talking to us about all things Victory Fund, and I look forward to catching up with you very soon, my friend.
And congratulations on your election.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right, and guys, we are going to take a break, and we will be back to continue driving it home.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez.
There's so much that goes on behind closed doors.
On WCPT 820.
Welcome back to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. I am your host today. My name is Ken Mejia-Beal, and I am talking to my co-host, Mike Nellis, and we stopped because I want to talk about this on air. Please let us know what you were just doing.
Yeah, so I was telling Ken a story about so 2 days ago I was in LA. I was at the Shorty Impact Awards, which is an award ceremony where they honor great work that marketers and consulting firms are doing in the social impact space. And we were up for a few awards. So for folks who don't know, I'm one of the founders of White Dudes for Harris. And so I had submitted White Dudes for Harris. And then they asked me to come out. And a couple days before I left, they told me that I was being named Strategist of the Year at the Shorty Impact Awards.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I was very surprised by the whole thing. I was like, oh my God. And so I put on my best suit. I fly out there, and then they do the individual awards for all the different little things people won. And there were so many really cool campaigns. I highly recommend people check it out because there was so much cool stuff. And then they go to do these. They were just called individual awards, what they were called. And I didn't know who had won any of the other awards. I didn't know what any of the other awards were. I just knew that I was one of them.
Yeah. Been there, done that.
They go to announce the first one, and I'm going to forget what exactly these awards were for.
It's okay.
But it was like Influencer of the Year, and then they're like Jordan the Stallion. And Jordan the Stallion comes out. For folks who don't know, is a big influencer. At least once a day makes me laugh. Is absolutely hilarious. And comes out and gives this great speech talking about their parents. And the next one was Changemaker of the Year, which goes to LeVar Burton.
Yes.
And the way the crowd audibly gasped and freaked out when LeVar Burton came out was amazing.
Was probably the same reaction they had when you mentioned it.
Yeah.
You guys missed it, but wait,
Ken audibly gasped. I mean, it was like, and at that moment I was like, stop, we'll do it on air.
Reading Rainbow.
So then they announced the next one, and it's me. And so I have to follow Jordan the Stallion and LeVar Burton. So I get up there and I go, and I had like a little speech prepared. You should get like a minute, and I get up there, and the very first thing I get out of my mouth was, man, everybody's really excited to be up here with LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow.
There you go.
I'm just thinking about how I share the stage with Geordie LaForge from Star Trek. And the way that I would describe the laughter was mild. It was the most mild. Like people were like, oh, and I was like, and in my head I really wanted to be like, did you want me to talk about Kunta Kinte? Like, what did you want me to do?
Well, yeah, like where else am I supposed to go with this? Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, I had tried when I saw that he went up there, I tried to figure out how to do the community bit. If you've ever seen it, where Childish Gambino is
I've never seen an episode of Community.
I don't know how interesting this is to the listeners, but there's an episode where Troy, who's played by Childish Gambino, gets to meet LeVar Burton, and he's so freaked out that he can't say anything, and it's like, you should Google it because it's hilarious.
I will.
And then he ends up shouting later after LeVar Burton's gone that, and I'm not going to shout on air, but it was, I never wanted to meet LeVar in person. I just wanted a picture. You can't disappoint a picture. And it's a hilarious scene. I wanted to figure out a way for me to be able to say that, but I didn't think I could pull it off.
Well, did you at least get to shake LeVar
Yeah,
Burton's?
like shook his hand, met Jordan the Stallion too, exchanged contact information with both of them, which was super cool. And then LeVar Burton was literally like, I loved White Dudes for Harris. It was such a brave thing for you to do.
It really was.
Really cool. And I was like, what is my life right now? Like, I'm just some guy from Chicago. But it was really, really cool. And he had won for this amazing reading initiative that he had done, because he's been, and I'm going to butcher what it probably fully is in its impact, but he was talking about how, like, when I was a kid, when he was a kid, we were taught how to read a certain way to be able to spell words phonetically.
Yes.
And then it sounds like for younger kids, for probably Gen Z, they were taught a different way that is now considered not as effective.
How were they taught? Do you know?
I couldn't articulate it, but he explained it in his speech that, like, they were trying to move back to a phonetic understanding of words.
Yes,
because there were a lot of people who now struggled to read as adults because they weren't taught a certain way, and it was really, really cool, and it was so amazing to meet him. What a hero of mine, who probably helped teach me how to read as a kid.
Same, yes, very,
and such a genuine, warm human being. It was really, really amazing. Super cool.
Well, I didn't know you, so congratulations. I mean, that's what I mean. You're accomplished. You've accomplished stuff. Like, it's awesome.
But my thing is, like, nobody accomplishes anything alone. And like I said this in the speech that I gave forward, is like, it's a group award.
It always is. Absolutely.
White Dudes for Harris was such a big success because there was a great group of guys around me, and like, I didn't found it alone there. I wouldn't even consider myself the main founder. There was another person, I think, who sort of lit the match.
Of course, there always are.
And like, my team at my company just does amazing work, and like, we've talked about Tammy Baldwin a few times since I've been here, but like, we worked with Tammy. We helped her raise a lot of money online that helped fuel her win, and like, I'm really proud of our team, and I wish that we would have won the presidential election too, but
I speak for all of us. We all do, but.
Well, not all of us, unfortunately. Well, but probably most of the people listening.
99% of our listeners do.
If you're turning into progressive radio and you're excited about the Trump win, just call in, because I have so many questions.
No, do not call in. My patience is short today. Do not call in. But I do want to thank you, Mike, for taking time out of your schedule, coming in through the traffic, sitting with this guy, keeping us afloat, and kicking some major ass this year. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for the time. And I really appreciate it. I hope the rest of the show goes great.
It'll go great.
You've got this.
Thank you, Mike. And we're going to take a break.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Driving it home with Patti Vasquez, Patti Vasquez. From global conflicts to greenhouse gases, the folks refusing to wear masks says, and politicians getting caught grabbing ass says, she's driving it home with Patti Vasquez.
And we are back. Happy Friday, and welcome to Minnesota, KTNF AM 950, and of course our WCPT 820 on the Heartland Signal listeners. My name is Ken Mejia-Beal. Did I say that? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Now you know twice. Ken Mejia-Beal. Driving it home with you today. And if Driving It Home now has its very own podcast, too, actually. Driving It Home full episodes and Driving It Home featured interviews. You can subscribe to one or both. The podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, PodTunes. No, there is no such thing as PodTunes. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Amazon. Just search for Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez, or get the links on Patti's show page by visiting heartlandsignal.com and clicking on her picture. So fun fact, guys, I gave up coffee today, and I think I'm going to go back tomorrow. But enough about me and my coffee. I want to talk about an organization that I am actually the treasurer of, Youth Outlook, and the work that we do, and is very important, very crucial. And to talk about it, I have the amazing development manager from Youth Outlook, Lisa Hilgenberg. Lisa? Bugle.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, Lisa, I've never had to pronounce your last name before, and I feel like I deserve a martini now. How are you doing?
I'm good. I am not excited to hear you gave up coffee as my money counterpart.
Well,
that seems like a dangerous thing while we're in budget season.
I did because I was like, I have natural energy, and I do. But unfortunately, that natural energy does not calculate to natural intelligence, and I'm smarter with caffeine. So I'll be back tomorrow. So thank you so much for joining. Youth Outlook is such a important organization, especially because we really are a beacon in the middle of the country. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about Youth Outlook and the work that we do?
Absolutely. So Youth Outlook was started in 1998 in a very conservative county in Illinois, and it was started by a group of folks who really felt like the LGBT youth in the area really needed somewhere to go. So we have made it all 26 years. We're rolling into year 27. We provide in-person and virtual services for LGBTQ youth and their people. So we have 11 current drop-in centers across north and central Illinois. So we go as far south as Peoria, as far west as Sterling, north into DeKalb, and then east along the West Cook County, eastern DuPage border. Mm-hmm. And so all of our services that are directly for families and youth are offered at no cost to them to really reduce barriers and not having to provide health insurance or any of those things. So we're able to really consistently keep open, safe, and affirming spaces for everyone who needs them on a weekly basis. We also have, if there was ever a silver lining for COVID, we found that during that time, our virtual groups were really being accessed by youth who were too far geographically, were not safe to leave their houses, couldn't leave their houses in order to get to in-person services. And so we did keep a couple of our virtual programs just to be able to have that wide, expanse into being accessible regardless of where kids are, whether they're in Illinois or outside of Illinois. So we have a youth group, and then we have a young adult group that meet virtually as well. And then the flip side of all of those are we have a grandparent group, we have a parent group, and then we've got our Rainbow Sprouts, which are our kindergarten through sixth grade families that come together as a whole family unit. So siblings, the kids, the parents, everybody comes together, and those all meet bi-monthly instead of weekly. So that's kind of the bulk of our direct service. We do a ton of professional education going into corporate spaces, into schools. We host a 2-day professional education conference with, the CEUs, CDPUs, CMEs, that we really look at all of the things that, that sort of wrap around idea for working with LGBT youth and their families, right, and what that looks like.
And, what I love about Youth Outlook, and it's so important, is when I was a young person, there was no visibility. And I think there's something about instilling young people with a sense of self and a sense of pride in who they are that can never be taken from them. And so what have you seen with your own eyes that instilling this pride in young people has brought them?
So we talk about it a lot internally as the possibility model. So really showing young people what the possibility of life looks like, particularly if they're in a hard time. So maybe they're just coming out at school, maybe they are transitioning, maybe they are just every general kid who's going from middle school to high school and what that looks like. And so, we like for our youth to be able to see sort of like what comes next, to the idea that right now our current your counterparts on the executive committee, our board chair and our board vice chair, are both former youth who grew up in our program. One of our other board members also became a part of our program during their internship. And so I think really being able to see all of the things that they can be from kids who were just like them in the program, kids who had access to safe and affirming spaces, that had access to adults who just wanted them to be their authentic selves. That's all they had to be. They didn't need to be, the perfect version of that. They didn't need to be fully one way or another way. They really got to be their messy, confused, working through it, teenage, puberty years selves that, is not the easiest for any kids. And then once you add intersections to that, it gets, shades of messier as you go. And so I think having that, we really see just, kids thrive. So really our goal is not just survival, but we really want for our kids to thrive. But we know statistically that, having an affirming adult in their lives lowers the risk of suicide by double digits.
Yes, it does.
And so that's, we look at what we do, although it is not clinical, it is not direct counseling, it's really social, recreational, but we look at it as that first level of suicide prevention, of really being able to create community, both for the youth themselves, but also for their caregivers and their families, and to feel like there are other people in your space and in your corner who are here to support you and who have been on the road you're on. And it may be different paths, but there is models and examples of how just really, really successful this can be.
And speaking of success, I don't know if that's the right segue, but with President-elect Trump's success in winning, it does cause a lot of panic within, especially the young folks, especially in our trans community. What, if anything, does Youth Outlook have in place to get us through these next times are going to be hard to kind of bring in, more of those folks virtually to make sure that our kids feel safe and secure? Because this is kind of like part two. So what did we do the first time? What are we looking to do now?
And I think it's important to remember that, as you mentioned, this is not the first time. So this time there is a little bit more known about what's to come. They are a group of people who, they will tell you exactly what they have planned, and we have no reason not to believe them. So, we are doing everything we can to work with our youth about, things that they should be preparing for come January, from birth certificate markers to getting passports to looking at, affirming healthcare. We have a program that's our Health and Wellness Navigators, and they work with trans and non-binary young people and their families to find affirming, everything from salons to, primary care doctors to dentists to anywhere that you really need to be able to interface and interact. We as a whole know that Illinois, as a safety state, is going to see more and more medical refugees as people are coming in to get trans health care and gender affirming care, because sort of all around us, it's getting locked down even now under the current administration because the states have the opportunity to do that.
Right.
So we're seeing more of that. I think we all have a lot to learn from, the reproductive rights movement of how to help folks sort of navigate through some of these things, if we're talking about the healthcare specifically for our trans and non-binary youth. But we are doing, all of the things that we can do that helps them feel prepared, feel like what are the things we can control? What are the things that we can't? How do we pick up the little pieces of what we can control, and how do we make the best of those? Finding the choices in things, I think, helps youth and young people feel like they do have some control other than just being told what to do, really telling them what they can do, and so that they have sort of that sense of ownership about what's to come and helping them learn. We were talking in a meeting the other day that our youngest kids in group are 12, so they were 6 the last time he was president, and so they don't have memories or recollections, so they're really hearing about, the war stories and the horror stories from before, but they weren't experiencing it at that time because they were 6 and 7 years old. So our older kids do know, but again, they were not able to vote. They, did not have the ability to participate. They were kind of bystanders, and so I think this time it's really about helping them, find the pieces that they can make an impact. And we keep hearing from people like, what can we do versus, just the general open, of like how to make it better as a global scale. But, how can we right now, like what can we do if we have to get through these next few years? And so we talk a lot about, what are the little things and, how do you make an impact and what does actionable allyship mean? It's, as Nancy would like to say, it's more than wearing the T-shirt.
Yes, and more important, like I love Nancy, but there are certain things that, yes, more than wearing the T-shirt or doing the Facebook frame, like being an ally really is a verb, and it takes work, it takes action, it takes a little sacrifice of yourself and your time. But one of the great things about, one of the many great things about Youth Outlook that I love is this form of the sense of community. And when we go and we meet with folks and we meet with the kids, even in our board meetings, it feels like home. Do you have any explanation of why Youth Outlook feels that way? Like behind the scenes, like what is creating that feeling of safety, I guess I should say?
This is one of those very few times that I feel like I am going to struggle to answer this, as you know, but listeners don't. Like, I am one of the, few straight allies on our staff. Most of our staff, most of our board, as it should be, are community members. And so I feel like for myself, what I observe is that this sense of community, and there's a large talk about chosen family in the community, particularly from some of our predecessors, like people who grew up through the 80s and like the coming outs in the 80s, who really did have to build their own families. These were folks who did not have safe and affirming parents. These were, by and large, that was the majority. As we're seeing now, about 50% of our new intakes, check a box that says, how were you referred, or how did you hear about us? And, they can check 5 things, but about 50% of them are saying that a parent referred them.
That is beautiful.
Is a huge shift from when we started 26 years ago, or when, older folks were coming out. Like, there was not 50% of people who were growing up in, safe and affirming households. So I think that's part of it, is that there's this idea that everybody is choosing to be there. So even if you are a youth who has not had that experience at home, you walk into a drop-in center and you know that there's a staff member there, but the bulk of the people there are volunteers. So they're there because they choose to be there. They went through a multiple-day training. They are choosing to spend their time with you. There's a lot of things that people could do with their free time, and I think it just reinforces. It's not just, we don't just say that, we are a safe and affirming space. It's really about the actions and, show it, walking the walk, and, the actions are speaking louder than the words. We trust the youth. We allow them to, lead.
Yes.
And we trust them to lead. And I think that's a huge difference in the way that we model working with young people versus a lot of other organizations I've experienced. We don't just say we're going to do it, but we show them we're going to do it. And I think with the adults, that brings in a certain type of adult. We tend to collect similar types of people. One, people who don't leave. As, you know,
right.
the running joke there is like, you know, half of our staff were interns at one point. Like people never actually like leave us. They might switch roles, but they stay. But the other part is just, you know, we collect people who make that same commitment and have those same visions and values in life, and we value young people and their opinions, and we trust them to, you know themselves and to tell us what they need. And I think that just is a different model.
Well, I do, because we are going to do a pitch to give us, because donations are important. So where can we donate to Youth Outlook?
Absolutely. So on the website is www.youth-outlook.org. And that dash is important because otherwise you will wind up in San Francisco. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. All of those have, you know, LinkedIn as well. If you are somebody who works with youth, we post a lot of our resources. If you're looking for ideas and experiences and tips on how to work with LGBT youth or their family members, but any of our socials, you are welcome to check out and
Lisa,
link back.
I want you to stick around because I have some questions for you. We're going to take a break, and we're going to talk to Lisa more when we come back.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez on WCPT 820.
Hello. We are back. My name is Ken Mejia-Beal, and this is Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. You are listening to WCPT 820 on Heartland Signal, and we have our friends in Minnesota, KTNF AM 950. We are back with my friend Lisa Helgenberg-Buell from, I'm just rushing through that last part, Development Manager at Youth Outlook. Because we were talking about donations, and it was something that I want to throw out there, is that there are so many folks that donate to wonderful organizations like the Trevor Project, for example, great organizations. But, and I throw this out there, with Youth Outlook, when someone is calling a hotline because they are depressed and thinking of ending their life, that's not the front line. That's the last line, and which is very important. But with what we're doing with Youth Outlook, we really are the front line. We are building that confidence and that courage and that oomph from the very beginning. So we have Lisa back because this is so important. Lisa, on top of, because we're going to do another pitch for the website, but when you go to the website and you're reading it, what is the kind of couple takeaway points that you want people to really focus on?
Absolutely. So I think we are huge fans of places like the Trevor Project and HRC.
Yes.
And, there's a big balance between the crisis intervention folks who are, like you said, sort of that last slot, who are being and doing those things to try to help prevent us getting to a place that we are in need of, you know, crisis hotlines.
Right.
And in the middle, on the ground, in the community, at the school, down the block, like in people's communities, are places like Youth Outlook, where we are literally the people who are training the teachers on how to provide comprehensive sex ed and how to, you know, create gender plans at the high school, or how to, you know, work through, you know, why the use of pronouns is important, and looking at your bathrooms and looking at all of the different, you know, options for things. So that's happening in your everyday communities. And so that's happening on you know, we have the one-to-one access with the youth and with their teachers and with their therapists and with their doctors. And that's really where the work that we're doing, and we're able to, because of really generous donors and because we have some really amazing funders, provide those services for the last 26 years at no cost to our youth and our families who need them. So that's not an additional barrier. There are a lot of barriers in life, and we know the economy right now for most people is one of them. And
Yes.
so being able to continue to keep this in that same vein, and we never, ever do I allow people to call it free, because it's not. It is underwritten, and it's funded by really, really amazing people who want to make a difference. And frankly, we know now, going forward more than ever, we're going to need even more of them, because we don't know what will happen with funding. We get very little by way of government funding, and it is not federal dollars. We right now have some state dollars that are very specific, and we have some county dollars that are very specific, but we don't receive federal funding. However, we are not sure what's to come with funding across the board. So I think we will be in the place of really looking at, what are our options and other resources. If folks are headed to the website, depending on who you are and what your interests are. If you are somebody who works with youth or families, if you are somebody who works in HR or is in charge of, owns a small business and wants to be an affirming place, a safe place where youth or their families can come in, I highly recommend looking at our service section. It really takes people through the different kinds of services that we provide. They can reach out to us to become, a resource. They can reach out to us to, get additional education for themselves or their staff. Our resources page is all vetted information. So this is something that we take very, very seriously, and we have a number of staff and our interns that check on all of the things that are listed here. So it's all places that we have, personally vetted, whether it's education or comprehensive lists, or it is crisis support or caregiver support. It really kind of runs the gamut, of substance use to working with, disability and neurodiversity. So really looking at a lot of the intersections that add on to the LGBTQ population and what that looks like, and making sure that we have, pieces for everybody to match and feel represented when they're looking at that. Our donate page has tons of information about what we're doing with your money. We are really, really proud to have the Platinum Transparency Seal through Candid. It is the highest level that you can get, and it really is about ethically using. It's not easy to get, and it takes a lot to keep it. And, we are trying to be very clear about where our money goes and how we're using it, and, how our practices and everything from our ethical storytelling to how we raise our money and how we ask for money is all wrapped up in there. And then there's other places like shopping our Amazon wish list or in-kind donations. As anybody might imagine who's had a teenager or was a teenager, we go through an exorbitant amount of snacks in our drop-in centers. And if we're seeing teenagers about like 6 or 6:30 to 8 or 8:30 on a school night. And so for the most part, I have 2 teenagers at home. We go through more snacks than any other food in this house. And then get involved. If people are looking at volunteering, whether it be directly with youth, whether it is virtually volunteering, we have run a community network in Illinois for many, many years, and that really is for professionals, and it meets once a month, and folks are able to jump on that Zoom call if they'd like, but it also gets you on a listserv of tons of resources and partnerships and all of the different things, again, and that is offered right now at no cost. Our events, will overview some things like our gala that just happened, and we have lots of community-based events that are coming. We've got some in December. We just wrapped up Outspoken the other day. And then our professional conference comes. We're still waiting to sign a contract, but we're looking at early April of 2025. It'll be a 2-day conference.
So the point is, folks, go to youth-outlook.org. Look at the calendar, because we have a lot coming up for the 2025 year, and donate. Every little bit helps. every little bit helps. Lisa, thank you so much for taking some time out to talk to us about Youth Outlook and the importance of instilling confidence into our young people. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you. Thank you guys for listening. We will be right back after this break.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez on WCPT 820.
Hello, and thank you for listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. I'm your host for the day, Ken Mejia-Beal, and you are listening to WCPT 820 AM Heartland Signal, or KTNF AM 950 in the great land of Minnesota, which I cannot wait to visit again. If you're listen to Driving at Home weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. at 8:20 a.m. on TuneIn from heartlandsignal.com, or watch the live video stream on WCPT's Facebook or X pages. Hello. That was just waving. And you can also tell Alexa to play WCPT from TuneIn. Our next guest, well, it's that time of year, so we have a lot to talk about with our next guest. Thanksgiving is upon us, and our next guest is a combination of two wonderful things, politics and small business, and that small business is baked goods. So, Mary Jo Mullen, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Ken.
Oh, of course. Now, what is the name of your small business?
The name of our bakery is the Sweet Spot Bakery. We are located in Lisle on College Road, just south of Benedictine University.
And what is your website?
You can find us online at sweetspotlisle.com, as well as Sweet Spot Lisle on Facebook and Instagram.
Because this is pie season.
It is.
And
you're making all the pies.
Yes, and I last year I bought your banana cream pie and your French silk pie, and so I'm just going to be honest with you. I ate and ended up cutting a slice of the banana cream pie, and it was so good that I ended up just saying, "This pie is mine," and grabbing a plastic fork.
I love it.
And saying, "This is mine. You guys can have the French silk. This is now mine." So it's the sweetspotlisle.com.
Correct.
So please go there, check it out. But I want to talk to you about small business now that we've...
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Yes.
So it has not been the best of times for small business owners. What can we all be doing as consumers to be more supportive of small businesses? What are we not doing right? What do we need to do, Mary Jo?
Well, first is always shop local, shop small. I think it's really important when you're looking at making purchases as small gifts, if you want to get baked goods, if you want to find anything for your home, to look first at the small businesses in your community and what they have to offer. So I see a lot of people who are asking for recommendations in some of the moms groups I'm in, saying, "Oh, where can I get pies for Thanksgiving?" And people are like, "Oh, go to Costco, go to Jewel." And, right. Like, no, find your small business, find your bakery, and order from those local guys. You know, Costco will be fine right now.
Yes.
It's those little guys who are out there struggling, who don't have these huge contracts to get our supplies and are paying a lot of money to get butter, eggs, and sugar right now. So help us out. You know, we make way better, fresher, more amazing things than you will find at Jewel or Costco.
And can I say, and this is not a dig to Jewel or Costco or any of the other big box, but when I get things from them, which is very rarely because my friend owns a bakery, but the taste is better. It's definitely more direct. It's more personal. It's not, you don't have a machine that's making 500 pies.
Right. Everything is made from scratch in our bakery. We do everything by hand, and you can tell.
Yes,
to your point, like a lot of places, especially grocery store chains and things like that, have started, for like cakes, for example, have started buying cakes and having them brought into the store and just decorating them there. They don't even bake them in-house anymore.
Oh.
So, I mean, there's been some bakeries that have resorted to that, and it's really a cost-saving measure for them. But you lose something in that neighborhood bakery feel when you don't have fresh-made stuff. So it's really important for a lot of us that are just, you know, when you buy a cake from us or you buy a pie from us, you're going to get a fruit pie. It's going to have butter in the crust. It's going to have fresh fruit in the filling and all pure ingredients, no extra chemicals, no additives, nothing like that. Like I would even venture to say it's slightly more healthy.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. When we start talking about, especially small business owners, especially women small business owners, I always try to spotlight that because being a small business owner is hard. Being a female small business owner, I can only imagine is a tad bit harder. What kind of, because I know that you actually had a kind of a small meeting with the lieutenant governor, or you went to, so what was that about? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It was really fantastic. I was invited into a listening session by my state senator, Senator Ellman.
Senator Laura Ellman. She's amazing. Continue.
She is. We love her. And she co-hosted alongside Juliana Stratton a listening session with women entrepreneurs and small business owners, trying to understand what obstacles we face that may be unique to women as small business owners. And then they're doing listening sessions all through the state this year, and then next year we'll be working on, okay, what did we hear? How do we start putting legislation in place, grant programs in place, whatever the case may be, to then support our women entrepreneurs in the state of Illinois. So it was a really cool opportunity to be able to have that dialogue with the lieutenant governor and know that she's really interested in what we have to say and is going to be following up and taking action too.
Well, and for those of you that are not in Illinois, our lieutenant governor is simply the best lieutenant governor in the United States of America. She's amazing. But so another question that comes into play, because we're going to talk small business, we're going to get into a little bit of politics later. How has the cost of rising, because I've corrected folks on that I've talked to even here when they say, well, the cost of eggs isn't that big of a deal. It's like the cost of eggs is a huge deal to somebody, and it's a huge deal. So how have you been able to weather these storms, because you are a business that is 100% reliant on grocery?
Right. And so I'm lucky. I've got a distributor that I work closely with, and my rep through my distributor focuses on a few of us who are smaller businesses, smaller food service entities, and tries to negotiate better pricing for us for eggs, flour, and butter, because it is so high.
It is.
But during COVID, you really started to see eggs and butter especially jump up. And then recently with some salmonella concerns, there was another spike in eggs because there were some chickens that had to be destroyed as a result of it. And every time one of those spikes happens, I'm trying not to raise my costs. And you can't really change the cost on a daily basis or a weekly basis at a bakery. So I'm trying to hold steady, but it's cutting into profit. It's cutting into how much I can push out also, because I can't have as much of the ingredients on hand because I'm trying to purchase it a little bit more carefully and not overbuy because it is so expensive. So, I mean, as I spend about $200 a week on just butter for the bakery. I know when I buy cocoa powder, like chocolate is gone through the roof also. When I buy 6 5-pound bags of cocoa powder. That's $300 just to get cocoa powder so I can make chocolate cakes. So,
that's a lot.
Changes in price. It is. And it's 40 to 50% higher than it was when the woman I bought the bakery from started out in baking there in 2019. We haven't been able to raise our prices at the same rate because people really respond when our prices suddenly jump. They really get they don't think a cookie is worth $2, and
but it is.
It is, and you have to explain a little bit about, well, I use all butter. This is real, butter and everything, and it costs a lot. When you go to the grocery store and you buy it, it's the same thing I'm dealing with. And then people are a little bit more understanding of when our prices change. But it's hard in small businesses to fluctuate your prices and not have people kind of back off of you and wonder why you're doing it. And it's completely in response to the same thing that you as an individual see at a grocery store.
Yeah, and one of because I love supporting small business, one of the big things is, well, if you go to, one of the big boxes, Walmart, Target, whatever, you can get things cheaper. And it's like, yes, you can, but here's the problem. It ain't that great. I want stuff that's good. I want the best. Now, don't get me wrong. I will pop in to, my local big box to grab a T-shirt or two to go to the gym, because that doesn't matter. But when we look at things like food, like baked goods, I think dessert is a luxury, and I want to really enjoy a luxurious piece of French silk cake, and that's not, I want a good one, and if I'm going to spend the money, I'm going to spend an extra $3 to make sure that it's the best instead of mediocre. And speaking, I don't want mediocre on my kitchen table, on my dining room table, in my lap while I'm eating it with a plastic fork and watching Bob's Burgers. I want the best, and that is what you do, Mary Jo, at Sweet Spot Bakery in Lisle, Illinois. And speaking of Lisle, Illinois, can we have a conversation change?
Of course we can.
Well, before we do that, though, we're going to go on a little break, Miss Mary Jo, and when we come back, we're going to talk about your run for mayor. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Fred.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez on WCPT 820.
Welcome back to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. My name is Ken Mejia-Beal, and I am stepping in for Patti Vasquez, and thank you for listening to WCPT 820 AM, Heartland Radio, or KTNF AM 950 if you are in the great state of Minnesota. We are here with small business owner Mary Jo Mullen, owner of the Sweet Spot Bakery in Lisle. That is sweetspotlisle.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, we're going to keep plugging that. But I want to talk to you now about something else that you are doing in Lisle, Illinois, and that is running for mayor.
Yes.
So I want to talk about that. You are currently a Lisle trustee member.
Correct. Yes, I said I'm one of 7 members of the village board.
Yes, and you are, if I can be honest, my favorite member. Don't tell your coworker Tom Duffy I said that, but you're my favorite.
Your secret's safe.
Thank you.
Sure he's not going to ever hear anything.
He's not. But why are you running for mayor?
So I'm running for mayor because we've really stagnated in a lot of ways in Lisle. I worked here in the late 90s, and there's a lot of things that are very similar in terms of our downtown not having the same richness and ability to walk and go through a lot of shops and restaurants like you do in a lot of our surrounding communities. And we've been trying to work on that for a long time without any progress. So when myself and you mentioned Tom came onto the board 4 years ago, we really started putting a lot of effort into economic development and really trying to find ways to bring business to Lisle, to expand what Lisle has to offer, and to make this a thriving community. And we're working with the developer on a really blighted piece of land on our main street. And we've been working and pushing on that for 2 years. And we had tax incentives in place. We had a lot going for it. And we were approving steps along the way to get this development in place. And every time we would approve something, our mayor would veto it. And we had the numbers, luckily, to overrule him. But that's a month-long process.
Correct.
We would approve it. 2 weeks later, he would veto it. 2 weeks later, we had the opportunity to override it. And that happened 3 or 4 times. And it's ultimately scared off the banks from coming to Lisle and investing in this development. So the developer walked away. And it's just been obstruction after obstruction from our mayor in terms of redeveloping our downtown into a thriving environment that people want to hang out in. So we need to have progress. We've been making slow and steady progress in the background in some other areas, but these blighted areas, we also have a former EPA Superfund kind of site at Lock Farmer, and both of these properties people have looked at, and they're always scared off. And we need a new face. We need somebody who's in favor of economic development, in favor of small business, who really loves their community, and that's me.
Yes,
I want to be leading Lisle into the future.
And I can say this with you put your heart into everything that you want to do. There's a passion behind it. You don't do stuff just to do it. And so let's say, because there's only you and the current mayor running, correct?
Correct, yes.
So after you beat him so badly that he moves all the way to Florida, because that's what happens when, we beat people, they move to Florida. What do you sorry, Florida, not our fault. What are some of these development what do you see yourself doing as mayor?
So I really want to be more friendly to development and start talking to developers, finding people who really want to invest in our community. It's a tough market right now, and there's a lot of moving pieces to get large developments going. But we have these couple of priority areas at Lock Farmer and our downtown where I watched the hometown that I grew up in Elk Grove, they've been really successful at navigating this with developers as a relatively small community, and we're similar. So I really want to have these conversations with developers, invite them in, spend some time with them, talking to them, and I want to be more present in the community. I want to not just show up at something for half an hour and leave. I want to really be talking to business owners. I want to make sure that they want to stay here, that we are providing programs and grant funding that matches what they need. There are some things that are going on right now with some of our grant programs that we know that we need to update them. We know we need to change them. And our mayor makes that even harder right now to get grants as a small business. There's been a couple of recent examples where he really challenged somebody who he wouldn't necessarily challenge everybody, but in this case it was somebody coming in to do chai tea and small plates, and he really put them on the spot and made everybody uncomfortable. And that's not what you do with businesses. No. You need to be a champion of small businesses. You need to be a champion of people who want to come in and invest in your community, not make them feel small. And that would be a big champion of how I approach people.
And you should be a champion of people, and that is what you are and who you are. So Mary Jo, future Mayor Mary Jo Mullen, all the M's. Can't wait to put your name in a category game. Yes. Where now with your campaign? Do you have a website up? Can people donate to you? How? Talk to me.
So I am running as part of a slate. They have 3 trustee candidates, including Tom Duffy that you mentioned before, Christy Grau, Christy McGovern, and Ed McQuillan running for clerk. Our slate is called Lisle Forward, and LisleForward.com is where you can learn more about us. We're just at the very beginning of the campaign. So we'll be rolling out information on our Facebook page also, which is Lisle Forward. We'll be doing spotlights on our candidates so everyone can learn more about who we are, what we are looking to do, and what makes us love Lisle, and learn more about what we want to do in terms of economic development, from creating new development to hosting better special events and bringing people in from out of town to really just retaining our good small businesses and making sure that they feel welcomed.
Well, thank you for everything that you've contributed to us this evening. Future Mayor Mary Jo Mullen. Check out the Sweet Spot Bakery. You're welcome in Lisle. And while you're checking out the Sweet Spot Bakery in Lisle, if you live in Lisle, check out voting in this municipal election and vote for Mary Jo Mullen. Thank you so much, Mary Jo.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. Now, for our listeners, we are winding it down. We should be home very shortly. I want to thank all of our guests this evening. We've learned a lot. But more importantly, as we get into the weekend and, anxiety is building, I strongly encourage all of you, take a few minutes to enjoy the beauty that is. And what that means is taking a few minutes to enjoy the life that you do have, enjoy the people that you do have, enjoy the freedoms that you do have. I think we take it for granted. And I will make this very quick because I have less than a minute, but I went to my annual doctor appointment today, actually. And I am, my blood pressure was 106 over, it was perfect. And my doctor said, Ken, what are you doing in your life? Why are you so? And I said, I started to set boundaries. I started to laugh in the faces of my enemies. I started to hug my friends. I wake up every day with a song in my heart. Jesus on my mind and vodka in my freezer. Life is as good as you make it or as bad as you make it. So this weekend, or leading up to this weekend, take a few minutes to enjoy the beauty that is and get rid of the ugly that ain't. Get rid of those nasty people on Facebook. You know who they are. Get rid of those nasty people in your text messages. Block them. Delete them. But life is too short to be unhappy. And this coming from, can I just say, a black man with a blood pressure of 106 over 64 or something. It's amazing, y'all. I feel great. And I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening. Be kind to each other. Be kind to yourselves. The world is not as scary as we all think it is. God bless. And thank you for listening to WCPT 820 AM, Heartland Signal, driving it home. Patti Vasquez. Enjoy.